Los Angeles, I'm and most Hollywood nights. She goes to California, oh, California.
What you say about Los Angeles?
LA got the people saying.
You're listening to Corner of the Galaxy on cornerofthegalaxy.com. Welcome to Corner of the Galaxy on cornerofthegalaxy.com. I'm Josh Guesman along with Wendy Thomas, and on today's show we're going to wake up from this LA Galaxy hibernation that the team seems to have put us in. We're going to be talking about a bunch of team news and what that means for the club. That includes speculation on why Nigel de Jong left, the LA Galaxy, and of course, some possible DP targets. We'll also be joined by former LA Galaxy associate head coach Dave Sarachan, as he has taken over our current U.S. men's national team assistant role. And of course, the preseason starts at the end of January, and the LA Galaxy have to get to announcing things. Let's get started. Corner of the Galaxy starts right now. You're listening to Corner of the Galaxy on cornerofthegalaxy.com. Now here are your hosts, Josh Guesman and Wendy Thomas. Hello everybody and welcome to Corner of the Galaxy on cornerofthegalaxy.com. Josh Guesman with you once again. Miss Wendy Thomas joining us as well. We have a fun show set up for you. Like I said, coming up a little bit later, former associate head coach Dave Sarachan is going to join us. And then, of course, Wendy and I are going to talk about a whole bunch of things, rumors included, everything fun that has happened with the LA Galaxy, or even not happened with the LA Galaxy since the offseason has started. Let's start, of course, by wishing Wendy Happy New Year. How are you doing? You survived the holiday season?
Josh, Happy New Year to you. I feel repressed. I feel like I have a lot of soccer energy and no place to express it.
Right. Like you've been left out in the cold, in the winter. There's nothing to do. Perhaps you're locked into a small room with only, Monopoly and nobody to play against. Is that sort of what I'm feeling?
I actually love Monopoly and most board games, but this whole off season, the Galaxy finished their season so early, and then now it just feels like it's dragging on for months. And unlike many teams that are signing players, all kinds of interesting transfer rumors, it's like the LA Galaxy fell into a black hole for all the information that we're getting out of them.
Yeah, I think there is some of that. I definitely think that there's some of the black hole information. I think that we haven't gotten a lot of things. I think that when we look at the whole of the LA Galaxy and what has happened since 2016, the end of the season, Wendy, we're going to find that perhaps there wasn't that much that actually happened in terms of, yes, there were a lot of players that let go, but as we're going to talk about here in a little bit is how much has that even impacted the team, and it's more about signing players, and those signing players hasn't happened.
No, it hasn't.
All right.
And
yeah.
I think it's just, Galaxy fans, I think, feel a little pent up because when they're reading stories about the Sounders signing players, Chicago, Columbus, Philadelphia, and there's just no news about the Galaxy, we're all looking around at each other like, when are we signing a DP? When are we even getting just something? Like, sign a homegrown player, sign a transfer, bring someone up from Los Dos, sign anyone, just give us something.
Yeah, it does. See, again, we're in, and part of that, I will say, Wendy, I think part of that really is the black hole that seems to happen around the holidays. Some of that definitely is it. Granted, other people have announced things, but as a whole, it gets pretty quiet up until about January 1st, and then things start happening again. So we'll start with some of the news that we have right off the top. Obviously, Mike Magee calls it a career after 14 years in Major League Soccer.
Mr. Magic Mike, Mike Magee, has given us so much with the LA Galaxy, and really as a league player since joining he joined MLS in 2003. Which, by the way, it makes me feel really old. The fact that players that I have watched grow and play a long time with the LA Galaxy, Wendy, it makes me feel old that they're retiring now. Like Landon Donovan retired, and I'm like, hey, that guy is kind of my age. Now Mike Magee is retiring. Hey, that guy is younger than me, and he's retiring. I don't know. Maybe it's selfish of me, but that's the first thing I think of is like, oh, these guys aren't that old. What? I could still play. I could do it. I could hang it. No, it's not going to happen.
Earlier today, you sent out a tweet saying, it's not really the loss of these players which hurts. And I said, yeah, it's the loss of the coaching staff. The one caveat to that I would add is Mike Magee, because we lost a lot of players, and I agree with you. Actually, most of those players were, bit players, role players, and or ineffective designated players.
Right.
And it doesn't really hurt to lose players that don't contribute much. The one player that I am really, really going to miss from the 2016 roster
it's not really the loss of these
Mike
players,
Magee, which hurts. And I said, yeah, it's the loss of the coaching staff. The one caveat to that I would add is Mike Magee, because we lost a lot of players, and I agree with you. Actually, most of those players were, bit players, role players, and or ineffective designated players.
Right.
And it doesn't really hurt to lose players that don't contribute much.
Yeah, I mean, it really is. It's interesting as we're having all sorts of fun technical issues today. It's going to be one of those days, Wendy, where new equipment, new stuff is just going to drive me crazy for the entirety of the show. But nonetheless, I think we're still hanging in there. But no, you're absolutely right that for the LA Galaxy, in terms of who is really missing, Mike Magee hits because of his leadership, because of what's going on, because of that he was one of those stable players. You talk about Landon Donovan, who really wasn't with the team all that much this year, is another guy who I think even in 2014, his loss in 2015, really impacted the LA Galaxy that way. So I see where you're coming from in terms of, Mike Magee is one of those players that hurts. And it's fun to talk about, Mike Magee and what he means to the LA Galaxy, because there are a couple players that kind of transcend what it means to even be an LA Galaxy player. And I think Mike Magee is one of those guys. We always say, Wendy, always a G, once a G, always a G type guy. But at the same time, some of that might not be so true. Some of it's a little window flashing. But Mike Magee is always going to be an LA Galaxy player.
Always a G.
Oh, it doesn't matter, because, again, it's more than what he has done on the field, what he means to the fans. That's important too, and it's something to look at. Now, I will be on the record as saying I didn't think that the LA Galaxy, if given the opportunity, should have signed Mike Magee to another contract. I wasn't. I would
actually disagree.
Go ahead. Why do you think that?
He actually scored several goals and made several assists. He was more productive than a lot of role players.
Right. Okay. So and I understand that. I worry, and it has been a worry for me that some of these guys, including Mike Magee, including obviously Robbie Keane, they continue to get older, and I don't like throwing money at older players in hopes that they can regain stuff. Yes. Don't. We'll get to Jermaine Jones in a little bit. We're going to be on the same side of it, so it's not even going to be that interesting. But, for Mike Magee, I could understand why perhaps the LA Galaxy wouldn't do that. And, for Mike, traveling back and forth, he has a family. I'm not sure he wanted to go to another place. I think he really likes Los Angeles. I know going back to Chicago was sort of billed as Mike Magee returning to home and getting to do that. And obviously, MVP season in 2013.
Mike Magee's day off. Remember that?
It was great. I mean, there's that's the whole thing. There's so many great Mike Magee moments. Obviously, we're going to talk about the San Jose game. That's the one that stands out the most whenever Mike Magee plays goalkeeper.
That's my favorite.
It's everybody's favorite. It's one of those things that you're never going to see again. I mean, I'm 35 years old.
It was so glorious. Not just because that he went in goal, but that he was so effective as a goalkeeper.
He was, and it was, but some of that was just like, it was ridiculous. It should have never happened. San Jose should have scored. First of all, if you go back and watch the highlights from that again, and I was at that game in person. I know there's lots of people who are going to claim
jealous.
Every LA Galaxy fan is saying, "Oh yeah, I was at that game." Right. And listen, I was there. There weren't that many of you. Okay. I'm telling you right now. But the sort of thing to look at there, was that San Jose should have scored early against Donovan Ricketts. Quite honestly, they were peppering the goal, should have scored a couple goals. Obviously, Ricketts gets taken out with the broken hand.
Josh Saunders.
Yeah, then Josh Saunders comes in and gets baited by Steven Lenhart. I mean, you couldn't have a more, sort of the villainous person. There was nobody in Major League Soccer who was loathed and hated more than Steven Lenhart was at that particular moment.
He was one of the Bash brothers.
It was so ugly. I so don't like him. I'm so not a fan of his, even for a little bit, even for a second. And so the fact that he was like the main villain in this, that he baits Josh Saunders, which, listen, I agree it was a red card, but you have to figure out a way to toss like Steven Lenhart out of that game as well for that particular incident, just because it was so blatantly villainous.
But it gave us one of our favorite moments in MLS. So
the LA Galaxy draw that game. I always have to remember it felt so much like a win that it was a 0-0 draw. But Mike Magee he had to play 48 minutes, I think, almost 50 minutes in goal. Mm-hmm. Unbelievable. You're never going to see. That's the thing. I'm 35. I will die and never see another goalkeeper or get pulled from the field like in that particular case. I mean, it happens so rarely. And the fact that every time the LA Galaxy would play San Jose, this is what made Mike Magee great, is that every time after that, they would talk to Mike about the San Jose game. You would have to bring it up because you can't think about San Jose and Mike Magee and the LA Galaxy without talking about that. And every time Mike would give sort of the same answer, but he always answered the questions. It was it's that kind of class act kind of guy.
It's also a great example of why MLS is a fun league, because like fans of other leagues who complain about MLS don't appreciate this aspect of it, that it's ludicrous, that it's crazy, but that it's ultimately like a really fun league.
It is a fun league, and crazy. Listen, crazy things can happen in any league, but that was one of those crazy moments. I don't know. I will tell you that some of my other favorite, Mike Magee moments, because I figured we would talk about, some of the things with Mike Magee that you sort of remember, is that during that season in 2011, doing this podcast with host Jared Dubois all the time, it was one of our first really big years where we really tried to do, a lot of stuff. Granted, we started in 2009. We had 2010 under our belts. 2011 was sort of right before we got the press credentialed and we were in the press box. And so in 2011, one particular host of Corner of the Galaxy rode Mike Magee every single game because he thought he was a horrible player and didn't know what he added, and may have gone on several long and tedious rants about how horrible Mike Magee was. For a long time too. Remember, this happens in June, the game. So from the beginning of the season all the way to June, Josh, was just riding Mike Magee. Just, what do you bring to this team? You bring nothing to this team. You shouldn't be on this team. I don't know why Bruce Arena brought you over. You probably should have stayed in New York. What's the point here? You're horrible. Don't pass the ball to Mike Magee because that's where offense goes to die.
And he eventually becomes MLS MVP.
Yeah, what does Josh know? I mean, if we ever wanted to talk about something. So I remember going to that game in San Jose. I went up with one of my buddies. We were there. We stood with the Angel City Brigade and the LA Riot Squad and the Galaxians in the supporters section. At one point, there were no chants for Mike Magee. This is how early in Mike Magee's sort of history of fandom in LA Galaxy land this was, that there were no chants for Mike. But nobody had a Mike Magee chant. Right? Because realistically, he had done some things. He had absolutely done some things, but he wasn't the legend that we know today, Wendy. So it was one of those things. So Mike Magee is on Magee is on fire, got born that day. Lots of things happened, and that ended up. And then lonely podcaster Josh gets back to San Jose Airport, is sitting there getting ready to take off on his flight, and is like, hey, Mike Magee facts. And I put out one of the worst tweets, I think, of my life, quite honestly, with the hashtag Mike Magee facts, right? And it was. Here is the exact tweet, and I apologize in advance for it. It was Mike Magee facts. He doesn't need to use his hands, but when he does, the ball sends him flowers afterwards. Now,
it's pretty corny.
And not only is it corny, it doesn't even make all that much sense. Like, I go back and I sit there, I go, nice tweet game. But what happened was I got on an airplane immediately after I sent that tweet. I land, and my mentions and the LA Galaxy mentions are flooded with Mike Magee facts stuff, right? And what had happened is the LA Galaxy had retweeted my tweet and said, send us your best Mike Magee facts. So I have the distinction, and I've talked to Mike about this, of starting Mike Magee facts.
That's a point of pride.
It is a point of pride. And then Mike told me, whenever I told him that I started Mike Magee Facts, he's like, so you're the one who blows up all my mentions all the time now. Thanks so much. Right. So, and I could understand that particular sentiment as well. But he was always, again, Mike was great. I enjoyed him. The LA Galaxy are gonna hurt under him leaving. If you're talking about sort of the biggest impactful person to leave that's not on the field related, it's Mike Magee.
Yeah. I was going to say for locker room.
Yeah, for locker room. Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. So it's Mike Magee. Again, he played over 20,000 minutes in Major League Soccer. Scored 70 goals plus those goals in the playoffs. And 2009 for the LA Galaxy, he scored 2 goals in the playoffs. In 2011, he scored 3. 2012, he scored 3 in the playoffs. The guy was clutch in the playoffs, and that's one of the things that you have to remember was so impressive and what built his legend with the LA Galaxy. So, I think he's going to be missed, and I know he's going to be missed in the locker room. The other thing that's sort of sad from the reporter side of things, Wendy, is that Mike Magee was one of those guys who was like a great quote. He would just tell you what's on his mind.
Right.
He doesn't care about repercussions or anything else.
Right.
And so I'll tell you that in the locker room right now, I don't know that there are very few people in that locker room who give honest answers about what is going on and just sort of in their mind. So he'll be missed. He'll be missed.
Yeah,
there's nothing else to say about it.
Mike Magee was one of a kind, great on Twitter, great guy in the locker room, great player, and LA Galaxy fans are going to miss him a ton.
I still remember when they traded him to the Chicago Fire to bring in Robbie Rogers.
Right.
Yes.
Outcry.
Outcry. Horrible. I mean, I'll be honest. Bruce Arena ends up winning that. I know Mike Magee ends up getting the MVP in 2013 with Chicago Fire. I'll tell you right now, if he stays with the LA Galaxy in 2013, there's no way he wins MVP because he wasn't going to play in the position that Chicago put him in. He wasn't going to score all those goals. They weren't going to play him as a striker.
I might have said that last year. I think Robbie Rogers had a bad year.
He did.
So I don't know about that trade.
Well, what I'm saying is that if Mike Magee stays with the LA Galaxy in 2013, he wouldn't have been MVP. He scored 15 goals with the Chicago Fire in 22 games in 2013. He was ridiculous off the hook, but he was playing as sort of this alone striker up top, and there's no way the Galaxy would have put him in that position. They had other people. He would have played in the midfield, which is where he was, which is why they got Robbie Rogers originally, was to play in the wing on the midfield, which is all interesting. But Bruce Arena ends up getting them both back in 2016, has everything. It all comes full circle. So, however you look at Mike Magee, I think Adam Serrano was saying that, if you look at the current, at some of the players, does Mike Magee make sort of that ring of honor for the LA Galaxy? He's borderline for me, but he has legend status. I would say
he's definitely a Galaxy legend.
He is. Whenever you talk to Mike Magee now, it's LA Galaxy legend Mike Magee. I mean, it's LA Galaxy legend Landon Donovan, LA Galaxy legend, Kobe Jones, LA Galaxy legend AJ De La Garza. There will be. AJ has legendary
when
status.
AJ goes.
Yes, but not yet. He doesn't get it yet. I don't get that. We don't get to say it. But Mike Magee is a legend. But does he belong in the ring with Kobe Jones, with Cienfuegos, with Landon Donovan, with David Beckham? I mean, people will argue about David Beckham, but he should be there as well. Robbie Keane, clearly, I can't believe I even went that long without saying Robbie Keane should be in that ring. So is Mike Magee one of those guys?
I don't know.
Is Omar Gonzalez?
Let the fans decide.
Yeah, no, don't let the fans decide. We've seen what happens. They vote Giovanni Dos Santos MVP when that happens. All right, I'm not going to replay that whole horrible thing again. All right, so Wendy, why don't we do this? Why don't we take a quick break and let's bring on former LA Galaxy associate head coach Dave Sarachan. So don't go anywhere. You're listening to Corner of the Galaxy on cornerofthegalaxy.com. Coming right back with Dave Sarachan.
Ready for some more Corner of the Galaxy? Don't forget to head over to the website for all the latest podcasts, news, and more. Visit us online at cornerofthegalaxy.com.
Hey, this is Chris.
This is Eddie. This is Jason.
And we're from Backpocket Memory, and you're listening to Corner of the Galaxy.
Welcome back to Corner of the Galaxy on cornerofthegalaxy.com. Josh Guesman back with you, and of course, Wendy Thomas will be back to join us in just a second or two. But first, I wanted to connect with one of my favorite guests. You guys know this. He's been on the show so many times, I think I've lost count. Always answered our questions, always been a great guy for us. So we want to welcome back to the show former associate head coach for the LA Galaxy and now current U.S. men's national team assistant, Mr. Dave Sarachan. Dave, thanks for stopping by. I appreciate it.
My pleasure, Josh. Always good to visit with you. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you as well, Dave. I would say it's probably a pretty busy off season for you so far. The departure from the LA Galaxy, obviously the sad part about that, but hooking up back with the U.S. men's national team at Bruce Arena, probably the happy part about that. How was your off season treated you?
Yeah, it was. Well, it was an interesting last few months for sure. But all in all, my off season was good. Getting back on the saddle with the men's national team is always an honor, and it's something I never take for granted. And the opportunity presented itself, obviously, with Bruce getting named and bringing me along with the others, and so. Always sad to leave one project. I thought our 8-year project, I call it, with the Galaxy was successful, fun, tremendous opportunity
Right.
to bring the franchise back to where we all know it should be. And the timing just seemed right to take on new challenges. And now we get going again in a little different direction with the U.S. men's national team.
Yeah, I was going to have to say, did you ever think you'd be back, being an assistant coach with the U.S. men's national team? Did you ever think that would come full circle again?
No, I didn't. I'll be honest. I really didn't. I mean, usually when you have an experience like that and then you move on, as I did to coach the Fire and then obviously with the Galaxy, the national team usually comes once in your career.
Right.
In my case, although I was an assistant the first time around, the opportunity to maybe be the head coach of the national team, was always out there. But
Right.
It's rare that you do get this, and it's really special to think about that. It's 14 years later. We're back in the middle of a World Cup cycle, getting ready to put our team over to Russia. So it's no, I didn't really think I'd have that opportunity, but knowing and getting that opportunity, you don't say no to the national team. It's really special.
Yeah, I was gonna ask, was Bruce getting the call to be the U.S. men's national team a surprise to you, a surprise to him? Because when you first departed the LA Galaxy, it was
Right.
It was reported that you weren't leaving because of a U.S. soccer job, and at that point, Bruce hadn't even been named yet.
That's true. No, that's true. My decision and Bruce's hiring were mutually exclusive. At the time where I felt I needed a new challenge, I made that public and made that newsworthy, and that was my decision.
Mm-hmm.
And then in this business, things change quickly. The decision for U.S. Soccer to move Jurgen out of that position and hire Bruce happened literally, I guess, five days after.
Right.
And then obviously we had some discussions, Bruce and I, and that process took a little time, but all in all, it really came together in a way that I would have never imagined, quite frankly.
What was the initial decision to leave the LA Galaxy? What in your mind had sort of changed, or had anything changed? Why did you decide to leave the LA Galaxy at the end of the year?
Well, that's a good question. I think I was here. Bruce and I came together in 2008, and when you fast forward to now, that's 8 years. Which is it's an eternity in this business.
Right.
When you think about it, to have a position like that for that long a time. Obviously, arguably, it was very successful. I enjoyed my time and my role, but I also felt that I had more to give if an opportunity was available to me to continue to be a head coach in the league. I didn't feel as though that would happen with the Galaxy.
Okay.
And I felt like if my time was right to look for an opportunity, my window of opportunity was now. And knowing that we've accomplished so much with the Galaxy, I felt good about that. So it was just, in your heart and in your gut, you kind of know, okay, maybe this is the time. So that was the impetus for that decision.
I have to ask you, if it was offered to you, would you have taken the head coaching job of the LA Galaxy?
Well, of course, if that discussion was real, I would have entertained that, no doubt. I mean, it's still a job that's an important job. It's still a high-profile position in our league, a very important position. And, I love the Galaxy. I've loved my time here. I love the area, and I feel like a Galaxian. So yeah, I would have entertained it for sure.
Okay, that's I always like that part. I'll be honest, on the show, all the co-hosts, and I have a bunch of them. You were our number one pick to continue the LA Galaxy. We were disappointed that you left at the end of the season because we thought for sure you were lined up for that position. So in terms of our show, and I think a lot of fans, I think you had our vote if you ever got that opportunity. So I don't know if that makes you feel any better or any worse, but that's how it went.
I appreciate that very much. I heard from a lot of people who were disappointed that I was leaving the Galaxy, and that's always a nice thing to hear. And it was just the timing felt right, and I'm very fortunate that it all sort of came together in a way to have an opportunity with the men's national team again, because that's really the highest honor you can have in our business, we think. And although I'm not the head coach, Bruce and I have worked together a long time, and it's not an ego thing. It's just a great opportunity and an important opportunity, I should say, at the middle of a cycle where we're at the bottom of our standings. So there's a lot of pressure. There's a lot of momentum to get this thing back, and we have full confidence in doing so.
Yeah, it seems like that was definitely. I would say, it would have been nice if Bruce would have left a couple of you assistants around for Kurt to hang on, but he pilfered the entire closet. I think he probably took his desk in the secretary as well. So no problems. I'm sure the LA Galaxy will reload. I wanted to talk to you about something a little more fun. Your favorite LA Galaxy moment. I know, like you said, 8 years, an eternity in terms of soccer coaches and being with one team. Can you find a favorite moment, or at least one that immediately pops into your head?
Oh boy, you got me on the spot, Josh.
Yes.
Geez, there's so many. I honestly, the thing that's freshest is in my mind because of Mike Magee's retirement was the game we had up there when he went in goal.
Yep.
And the performance. And that was all the Stephen Lenhart, Dave Sarachan bust up at halftime. If you remember, that was, I got accused of picking on Stephen Lenhart. I don't know if you remember that.
No. Tell me that story just a little bit. I don't think I remember. I was at the stadium and I was in the stands watching that game, so I was there in person, but I wasn't there covering it. So I don't know if I got all of it.
The quick backstory was that obviously we lost Donovan Ricketts and Josh Saunders, so Magee had to go in goal. When it was halftime, as I was walking off, Lenhart was coming like at a 90-degree angle fast towards my space. I don't think he was going for Dave Sarachan, but
right.
He happened to be. And I made a comment to him because he was just such an annoyance in the first half. And he looked at me, and as he was coming close, he was about to kind of step on my foot. And so I leaned in to protect myself, and we made contact. And at that point, the assistant coach for San Jose, Chad Barrett protected me. Everybody was kind of in this melee. And then, the word got out that I got into this fight with Stephen Lenhart. And, I remember some of the Angel City Brigade guys, giving me high fives the next day going, "Hey, you beat the crap out of Lenhart. That was great." But that wasn't really true. He apologized afterwards. But that moment, the Magee in goal moment, I mean, to me, that was just one of the standouts among a lot. I'd spend an hour on your show telling you too many more, but that stood out pretty close.
I was going to say one of these days we'll do that show, Dave. I'll just let you talk, and I'll just be here with the record button. But I've never heard that story before, and quite honestly, I think you did all LA Galaxy fans a favor if you would have gotten in a fight with Steven Lenhart. And so I will choose to remember you having a fight with Steven Lenhart, as I'm sure a lot of LA Galaxy fans have as well. And like you said, with that Mike Magee moment, such a I don't know. It's one of those once in a lifetime events. I mean, I don't know that we'll ever see anything as crazy as that, and it sticks out because Mike Magee is retiring. What was special about Mike Magee? Because I'm sure we're going to talk about him a little bit later in the show as well. What was so special about Mike Magee?
Oh man, Mike. I knew Mike when he was a real youngster back in Chicago, and then when he was first drafted in the league. The thing about Mike is that He reminded me of Dennis Bergkamp as far as the soccer player in front of goal. Mm-hmm. When the ball was at his feet in front of goal, I haven't seen a domestic player like Mike to be able to completely slow down, completely choose the array of shots that were required to get it not only on frame but in goal. Whether it was he had to roof it, hook it, toe poke it, he had such an ability to finish and be dangerous for a guy that was very Larry Bird-like, meaning didn't jump great, didn't run great, wasn't that strong, but he was soccer smart, he was soccer strong, and he was just a cool customer. And in his later years became a good leader, real experienced guy that brought a lot of the young guys along.
One of the dirtiest mouths in the league, though, right?
Well, yes, that is true, and I will tell you also in training, he and I had many moments because I refereed a lot in training where we got into it pretty good because he felt he always had to have the last word. Right. But as we know, coaches should have the last word. Of course. Yes, he had his moments for sure.
Absolutely, no. It's seriously one of the nicest guys, a class guy. I mentioned the dirty mouth thing. I remember being at a reserve game. And Mike was playing in that game. He was coming back from injury at some point, and I had never been that close to the field with like relatively no crowd noise or anything like that. And you could hear Mike Magee from both sides of the field, and it was enjoyable. I enjoyed every second of it. But yeah, it's one of those things. I think opponents always asked him if he was ever going to shut up. I think he even made mention of that whenever he said goodbye. So one more question before you get out of here. Sebastian Lletget, Gyasi Zardes both got call-ups into the January camp. Sebastian Lletget gets his very first U.S. national team call-up. What are you expecting from the U.S. men's national side out of Sebastian Lletget and also Gyasi Zardes coming back from injury?
Well, we all know Gyasi, and he's got a number of caps under his belt, and so the real question will be how he recovered from his foot injury, which I'm sure he's going to be fine. Mm-hmm. And I know he's very anxious to get back on the playing field, and we know him well, and I think he'll adjust very quickly and adapt. Sebastian, has earned the right to be in this group for sure based on his season and what he can bring. He's got a unique skill set that not too many of our American players have. So we're anxious just to see now that he's in amongst, our domestic best, how that looks and how it sort of plays out as we begin to formulate a plan, for the next roster. So, I think it's great, that he's going to get that opportunity, and he'll be excited too.
Yeah, it's going to be exciting. The U.S. men's national team camp kicks off here pretty soon, runs all the way through February, so it should be exciting to see those guys go, and the LA Galaxy start preseason at the end of January, I think January 29th or something like that, if I remember correctly. So all that stuff is coming. Dave, want to thank you for stopping by. I'm sure I'll reach out again to you in the future, but you have been an absolute class act. We've enjoyed all of our time whenever you come on the show. People love hearing from you. You always answered every question, and that one time we had tacos down in Hermosa Beach was one of my favorites. So with that, Dave, I thank you for stopping by, and I'm sure we'll have you on again.
I always enjoy it. Thanks, Josh.
All
Take care.
right. There is former associate head coach Dave Sarachan on Corner of the Galaxy. Always great to hear from Dave. Dave is again a class act. We're happy to have him on, and we're glad that he could stop by once again and talk to us. All right. Going to go ahead and take a break. Whenever we get back, more Corner of the Galaxy coming up. I promise we still have stuff to talk about. I know you think nothing's happening, but stuff is happening. We're just going to talk about the stuff that's not happening, and hopefully it will happen. All right, you're listening to Corner of the Galaxy on cornerofthegalaxy.com. Don't go anywhere. Recording from CoG Studios and not their mom's basement, it's Corner of the Galaxy. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Corner of the Galaxy on cornerofthegalaxy.com. Josh and Wendy back with you once again. Great interview from Mr. Dave Sarachan. Always enjoy talking to Dave. Wendy, I have to know what you think of Dave. What you think of Dave? He said he would have taken the LA Galaxy head coaching job had it been offered. It makes me weep inside, knowing that. I don't know how to react to that. Listen, Dave is great. Always loved him. Always think he's great. But it's a little, again, question mark, huge question mark. Why was Dave Sarachan not offered the job? Is he too expensive, or the LA Galaxy in cost cutting mode so much they couldn't afford Dave Sarachan? That has to be the only answer.
No, it's not cost cutting. With respect to Dave, he wouldn't have been too expensive. I mean, I do think that some of the rumors surrounding the Galaxy have been related to cost, but not that one. I think that I think he probably wanted more money than the Galaxy were willing to pay him. And also, if Bruce was going to give him a job with the national team, it's not like he should have had to take a huge pay cut. Kurt Anolfo is definitely an inexpensive option.
Right.
However, that being said, the fact that Dave would have taken the job does make me a little despondent about the route that the LA Galaxy chose, particularly in light of the rumors that are going around about what the LA Galaxy is contemplating paying Jermaine Jones, and if they're true, and also about the dearth of signings, the dearth of news regarding potential designated player targets. There's some things which make me a little bit disconcerted, and I feel like in Dave's hands, the LA Galaxy would have had a very sure steward.
Yeah, I can understand that. Joining me in the studio, he was here to sort of watch the first segment, but Ben Aranda, who has been, Ben, how long have you been a season ticket holder?
This will be my 13th year.
13th year, so he outranks even me. He was here, and he asked if he could come on. Ben, what do you think so far about Dave Sarachan, about the LA Galaxy not signing things, about Kurt Onalfo? I mean, are you getting any warm and fuzzies?
No, not at all. I kind of agree with Wendy to a certain extent. I'm not sure it was a cost-cutting thing or a price thing. I think Dave definitely would have been more expensive than Kurt.
Right.
But I think basically once Bruce left, Chris had his mind made up.
Yeah.
It didn't matter. And I think that's why we saw Dave leave a little early, because everybody knew Bruce was going to leave. And when Chris said, well, I'm not going to offer you the job to Dave, Dave said, okay, well, I'm going to leave.
Yeah. The timing of the entire Dave leaving, Kurt Onalfo signing, Wendy, for me is one of those question marks that I don't know that I'm ever going to get an answer to. I mean, I asked Dave why he left, Wendy. I think he gave us an honest answer. I think he left. I think he gave us as much of an honest answer as we're going to get. Let's put it that way. And I think Dave is always as honest as probably he can be without burning bridges.
Oh, yeah. I don't think that the Galaxy seriously entertained hiring anyone other than Kurt Onalfo after Bruce announced he was leaving. I think it's conceivable that there's been a plan in place for some period of time where it was understood that Kurt would take over once Bruce left. I don't know when that happened, but it's interesting that Dave left, and then there was a period of time, and then it was announced that Kurt was being hired. I think the notion that the Galaxy was seriously considering people like Berhalter or Siggy Schmidt is window dressing. I don't think that actually occurred. I think everyone within the organization had an understanding that Kurt Onalfo was taking over. And I don't know for how long that's been in place.
Right. It seems like it was a plan. Plan your work your plan. It seems like they have the plan. It seems like they're working on that plan. It seems like they're checking all the boxes off. Maybe Bruce Arena put that plan in place, and now they're all
Quite possibly.
and they're all just checking off the Bruce Arena boxes. I agree. Now, here we get into Jermaine Jones and the targeted allocation money. This is coming out of Kevin Baxter from the LA Times. Kevin's been on our show many times, good friend of the show. Kevin said in his article, basically, the LA Galaxy were hopeful to use TAM to sign Jermaine Jones. Jermaine Jones, who was paid what, $600,000 for 9 games.
Well, I'm sure Colorado wanted him to play for more when they signed him, but
Right.
he only wound up playing 9 games. And he, in fact, played fewer minutes for Colorado than Dave Romney played for the LA Galaxy last year. And I don't even have a memory of
Dave
Romney
Romney
playing for us.
Yeah, it's interesting to even put it in. I agree with you. Dave did play, I remember, but it wasn't a lot. And if you're going to pay Jermaine Jones that, then that's something that we have to look at and sort of scratch your head. Now, here's the deal. TAM money starts, targeted allocation money starts at the max budget player. The max budget player for 2017, I believe, is $485,000. So they have boosted. They have boosted the max budget. So at $485, if you pay, or $485,000, if you pay $1 over that, you have to use some sort of money
TAM
to pay that down. You don't have to necessarily use TAM. You could use general allocation money as well. But in this particular case, with Jermaine Jones, they can use the $1.2 million that is included, I think, to every team, or every team has available in 2017 to pay down that back to the max budget. Or you could probably pay it even under the max budget. I'm sure there's some rules that say you're allowed to bring it, way under that if you use X number of TAM. Maybe you could pay it all the way down up to a certain amount. Usually there's rules against completely wiping it off the books. But Wendy, you made a great point, because we talked about in the All Hands podcast, as you said, Jermaine Jones is roughly about $200K. That was what my initial thing was. So now you're looking at Jermaine Jones being a $500,000 player at least.
Yeah, and this is what's disturbing, because Colorado, not knowing that he was only going to play 9 games, valued him at $600,000. That is when he was 1 year younger. That is when he had not torn his ACL.
Right.
And that was before he entered a season where he was, essentially a part-time bit player for them.
Right.
The LA Galaxy, if they decide to pay him $500,000, that means they're doing so with the full knowledge of what occurred in Colorado last year, knowing that he's a year older, knowing that he tore his ACL 6 months ago. And this isn't a question of like grit or guts or passion. It's a question of how the ligaments are structured within your knee. There's nothing you can do about it. There's no amount of effort that can overcome that or that can decrease the likelihood that you'll re-injure yourself. I mean, it's a mechanical issue. It's not an issue of passion or character. And so it's very troubling to LA Galaxy fans who are already trepidatious about Curt Onalfo taking over when we hear that he is potentially going to make a bizarrely irrational decision.
Well, this is
one that seems really imprudent financially.
Right.
And especially when we're not getting any other news about what else they're doing. I mean, if they think that Jermaine Jones is worth $500,000, then that means they plan on him playing every game.
Yeah, I was going to say, now, would you be okay? And this is what I started thinking. I'm like, this is what I normally do. Because as with any player, Wendy, you have to look at how much money it is. So we need to know that amount. And then what are the stipulations? Are you okay with a games played stipulation in there that if he meets a certain threshold, he gets this amount of money. If he meets a certain threshold, he gets this amount of money. And, for 27 plus games played, maybe 28, 29 games played, even though he's possibly still a U.S. men's national team player, as he was called up to the U.S. men's national team camp in January, along with Gyasi Zardes and Sebastian Lletget, as I talked to Dave about. If Jermaine Jones can play 27-plus games, is he worth the L.A. Galaxy the $500,000?
Well, he's worth more, certainly, but I doubt Jermaine Jones would sign on for that. I don't think that an agent whose player has played, part of 9 games the year before would advise his client to sign a contract wherein he's required to play 4 times as many minutes or make 4 times as many appearances. So he would definitely be worth more money the more he plays, obviously, but, I can't fathom how this contract is going to be structured such that it would be acceptable to both parties.
Well, I mean, here's the thing, and I'll tell you this, and then, Ben, I want to get your thoughts on Jermaine Jones, is that, technically speaking, the LA Galaxy do have, they're both at an advantage and a disadvantage. They're at a disadvantage because, quite honestly, they seem to be putting a lot of stock in Jermaine Jones, and because of that, they're at a disadvantage, and Jermaine Jones and his agent probably know that they're putting some stock in Jermaine Jones, so that gives them sort of the disadvantage.
But why? They know his record from the year before. And if they're going to go into this transaction with all of that information, then they also know that they're going to be pilloried if it fails, and that every LA Galaxy fan will use this decision as ammunition to prove that Curt Onalfo and Chris Klein and Pete Vagenas are incompetent.
Yeah, well, the thing, if you're going to blame people for the moves, we have to separate. We were used to being able to blame everything on Bruce.
Right.
And you have to separate that now. It's not going to be on Curt Onalfo 100%. In fact, it probably will be the least on Curt Onalfo because he's not the general manager making the move, and Chris Klein is the president, so he's going to get blamed for everything. It's Chris and Pete who are going to have to figure this out. Here's where the LA Galaxy are a bit at an advantage with Jermaine Jones, and that is with the fact that they own his rights. He can't go anywhere else without the LA Galaxy's approval, sale, or anything else.
He doesn't want to go anywhere else.
And that's fine. So here's the deal. I mean, ultimately, they could hold him hostage now, which is, hey, yeah, we traded around a first-round draft pick. I don't consider that a huge loss enough to sign Jermaine Jones to, a $650,000 contract. That to me would be too much money, and it's not gonna make any sense. So they do have him a bit in a corner that way, is the fact that they have their rights. They probably already talked to him beforehand. I would have thought this would have been done, but the fact that it isn't tells me they're either playing hardball or that Jermaine's people are playing hardball and that, it goes back and forth. I have no idea how this goes out. I do not like
I think
Jermaine
the
Jones.
Galaxy are negotiating from the position of best leverage because he can't go to another MLS team. His family lives in Los Angeles. He knows that everyone in MLS knows that Colorado dumped him because he only played 9 games last year and tore his ACL 6 months ago.
Right.
I think he is in a weak bargaining position. And if that's what shocks me, that blows my mind that Kevin Baxter reports that they were going to use TAM to sign him. That means that the whoever is negotiating on behalf of the LA Galaxy has no concept about how to value these players.
Yeah, I mean, and it also could have been, remember, Kevin got that's almost a direct quote from Chris Klein, that they're hopeful to sign Jermaine Jones with targeted allocation money. So
shocking.
It comes from Chris Klein. There. And so, that could be, maybe that's an olive branch to say, hey, listen, we can throw more money in it or however that works. Here's the reason, and I think this is the way that Kevin asked this question. I talked to Kevin. I hope I'm not misrepresenting his question when I tell you this, but he asked whether or not Jermaine Jones was going to be a designated player. Right. And so if you are Chris Klein and you get that answer, you're going to say, oh, no, he's not going to be a designated player. But do you have to go as far to say we're going to sign, hopefully we'll sign him using TAM? Now, is it hopefully we're going to use him to sign TAM because we have so much TAM that we can pay him way down off the books and we don't have to pay that much and it's not going to be a salary cap hit and it's going to have no effect on the team, although you would think you could use some money.
TAM can only be used on a player who's earning over $485,000.
Correct. Yep. It has to be. So, yep, I know.
Chris Klein doesn't know what TAM is and how to use it, in which case that's disturbing, or they're contemplating paying Jermaine Jones $500,000, in which case it's literally like Bruce Arena handed the keys to his Porsche to his 15-year-old idiot son, who's just going to drive it off Mulholland Drive.
Yeah. Ben, go ahead.
Counselor, I just want to play devil's advocate with you real quick. What team has Jermaine Jones ever gone to that's gotten worse?
Well, he's only played for 2 teams in MLS.
And what happened to those 2 teams?
Yep.
Well, the Revs did make the playoffs.
They made the playoffs. They did more than make the playoffs, though. Yeah.
They went to the MLS Cup final in 2014, and then in 2015, Colorado also vastly improved, but no one in Colorado attributes that to Jermaine Jones.
Yeah, with 9 games, the Colorado argument, I agree with New England, and maybe a 33-year-old Jermaine Jones to New England makes a lot more sense.
Would be worth the $500,000.
But Colorado did get better.
But no one thinks that was attributable to Jermaine Jones because he never played.
But he had to have a part in it.
I don't know about that. He was gone for 6 weeks at Copa America, and then he was out for 4 months when he tore his ACL.
It would be, listen, I can give him credit for New England because you saw how he transformed that midfield. And I will say that when he played for Colorado, he was impactful. But overall, for Colorado, you have to throw up your hands and say it was probably more like Gashi, and it was some of the other role players that made
Tim
that.
Howard joined.
Tim Howard was not a reason. Don't get me started on that. Zach Math was a better goalkeeper. But yes, I know what you mean.
But down the stretch, when Colorado needed to win and needed to get that second seed, and everyone's looking around, Jermaine Jones says, "You guys got this." That means something to those players in that locker room.
It might. This is the one argument that I will say that, and it's a bad argument to pay somebody $500,000.
Yeah, absolutely.
But he is a veteran. And you are now lacking veteran leadership. And so you can bring in Jermaine Jones. Granted, he's not the most trustworthy veteran. He flies off the handle. He gets yellow cards. He gets red cards. I mean, he is, a little more, I would say, unstable, but I mean that in almost a positive way. He's more unstable than a lot of guys. So I don't know that that's the type of veteran, but you don't pay a guy that much. Yes, Wendy.
The Colorado players, the leadership there, the front office there, they were behind the scenes to determine which players are making an impact and having a positive, pushing our team forward in a positive manner. They concluded that they did not want Jermaine Jones playing for them in 2017 because they wanted to dump him. It was at the very end of the season, they were saying he can't come back. How are we going to get rid of him? And so those people who are in a better position to understand and know than us what happened concluded that he was not a necessary part of the team.
Yeah, it's interesting, and again, the Jermaine Jones and how he fits into the team, and whether or not the LA Galaxy are putting more eggs in the basket than they possibly should with Jermaine Jones, is something that is interesting. Also, in the Kevin Baxter article, I invite you to read that, LATimes.com. Find Kevin Baxter. You'll read this about the LA Galaxy coaches, all of them going, as you heard me talking to Dave, all of them going to the U.S. men's national team. Bruce Arena took Dave Sarachan, Kenny Arena, Pat Noonan, and Matt Reese. All of them gone.
The entire coaching staff.
It was well known, and we've talked about it on this program many times. Everybody knew it was happening. It just wasn't official, and so now it's official, and that's how it goes. But, it sounds in that article like Chris Klein is saying that they are very, very focused on specific positions within the midfield. And if you look at the roster,
Okay.
Wendy, I mean, it's the duh. You better be.
We
be.
need to sign a central midfielder and potentially a winger.
Yeah, there. And that's so. And Wendy, you had the roster up at one point, and there were
Yes.
like, I think, how many spots were open on that? Now with Mike Magee retiring, I think
There
you get
was
another one.
2 DP slots
Right.
available, and then there's 3 or 4 senior roster slots.
So there's 6 players that need to be added to the roster in order to make a complete roster in 2017. Listen, compared to, and I made this argument on Twitter, compared to last year, the 2015-2016 offseason, the LA Galaxy had a ton of changes to the starting lineup from 2015 to 2016. That was almost, and everybody's asking, is this a rebuilding year? Is this a rebuilding year? And it was like, yeah, man, that almost was. It was like a reload year, all right? I wouldn't say rebuilding because I think that wasn't what it was, but it was a reload year. This year is not
Less so.
is not that. It is. It's less so. And I think people are panicking because there's no news and there's 2 designated player spots
yeah, it's
open.
the 2 designated players. It's
Right.
not that the number of players, it's that you potentially could transform the face of the team, the whole dynamic of the team by adding 2 designated players.
Exactly. And I think you're going to get, listen, I was on the record as saying I think you'd get 2 designated players before the beginning of the season. I think it's now 1 and 1 in the summer. I would rather take a lesser player now than a better player in the summer because that transition always seems to go. But
I know. I actually would prefer if we just signed 2 designated players now.
Yeah, it's like just get
Take 6 months.
Yeah, exactly. It takes away, and that's how it happens. So you look at the players that lost, and again, an argument I had on Twitter, or at least something that I thought was thought-provoking. We talk about the on-the-field product, Wendy. You've lost Jeff Lorenitz, Leonardo, Landon Donovan, Robbie Keane, Steven Gerrard. Who is the biggest impact to the on-the-field product for the LA Galaxy out of those players?
Okay, well, when Steve Gerrard played,
He was great. He was
good.
I know. I know, but it's like, but how that didn't happen very often.
Didn't happen often. I'm not concerned really about the loss of the players. I really want us to sign an awesome DP, but that is more to comfort me, to let me know that our coaching staff knows what they're doing, not because I'm really concerned about the team and its players. I'm way more concerned about the general competence of the leadership of the LA Galaxy in terms of how they're managing it. And if we did sign a fabulous designated player, then I could say to myself, okay, they do understand how to do this. They still have an international presence. There's still some persuasive ability within those who are negotiating on their behalf. Whereas for me, the players, I think the back line is fine.
Yes.
Perfect. I think up top we're good.
Yep.
We got Zardes, Gio. We got tons of backup strikers. We do not need forwards. We do not need defenders. What we really need is some fantastic DP, central midfielder, or winger.
Yeah, no, and that's where the focus should be. And I think that was even the focus immediately after the season. I mean, we all saw that. Now, there are targets out there. In Kevin Baxter's article, Honda was talked about. All right, now Honda said, and Kevin had this, and basically the LA Galaxy did have interest in Honda at one point, and now they say there is no interest in Honda anymore, which I've racked my brain because whenever this happens, you have to say, okay, so why do they think
What
that?
happened?
Yeah, what happened or why do they think that? And one of the theories I can come up with is that they're worried that Honda, and I can understand this, that Honda and Gio could have a Gio and Robbie Keane effect the same way. Granted, you'd have to flip some positions in order to do that. You basically could put Gio up top, right? And then you have to put Honda in the midfield and see that perhaps they could run into each other. So
That's plausible.
So I think that's plausible. And if that's the case, if that's how they thought, which
Then they really are looking at central midfield.
and I like that. I'm like, yes. Now the other person that has been rumored, and again, I'm telling you this, pay attention when I say this. Connor Hourihane is a Barnsley player in the championship. He's 25 years old. He is a midfielder. I believe he's a central midfielder, and he can also play some wing. But he is one of those guys. He's 25, okay? He plays in the championship. I get it. Everybody's already rolling their eyes, and they're like, oh, come on, this is ridiculous.
No, I'm not rolling my eyes.
I will tell you that I know for a fact that the LA Galaxy at one point went to look at this guy.
Yes.
Okay, so we know that. I'm not saying they're going to sign him. I'm just saying that I know they went to look at him. Okay, this is a 25-year-old. Listen, I'm short on rumors. I'm bringing everything else that I have.
I can tell you everyone who we've been linked to, even though it's totally implausible. People have talked about Darwin Quintero,
right?
But Club America wants to recover most of the $10 million it paid for him, and that's not happening.
Not going to happen.
Daisuke Honda is out.
Yep.
Anderson Hernandez, I don't think that's true.
Right.
John Obi Mikel, I was thinking he would be awesome, but he was just signed by Tianjin Teda in the Chinese Super League.
Chinese,
I've heard Kevin Prince Boateng.
Of course.
I've heard Dario Benedetto, but I don't believe that rumor's true because it came from his agent.
And not only that, but the amount of money that was rumored in that
$12 million transfer fee? No way.
No, not happening. So that, okay. So,
and then I've heard Connor Hourihane.
Yeah, and listen, we go in plausibility, all right? Honda was plausible. I'm telling you right now,
was plausible.
The LA Galaxy had interest in him
and
him
he
at one point.
also had been to Los Angeles, likes Los Angeles, wants to establish an academy here. I checked out his website, and he has a very savvy media presence.
Right.
Guys like that, like LA.
Yeah, and his publicist is here in Los Angeles, by the way, just in case. So, all these things sort of lined up. So, Honda was a serious thing, and if they have chosen not to go with him because of the reason that I am theorizing, then, hey, that's great. I think that we
need a central midfielder really badly.
You need somebody because you can't depend. Listen, you cannot. These are the things that you cannot depend on right now. Everybody wants to depend on Emmanuel Boateng on the wing. You cannot depend on Emmanuel Boateng on the wing. I love the kid. He needs to develop. He was up and down. He was inconsistent. If every game you played was against Real Salt Lake, Emmanuel Boateng would be your guy, Wendy. But you're not going to get to play all those games against Real Salt Lake. You'll get 3 of them at max, and that'll be it. So
no. That's fine. We could definitely use a winger too.
Right. And so you have that. And then I'll be honest with you, right now in the center of midfield, relying on Sebastian Lletget or relying on, and I'm going to say this, hang on there, Baju Husidic. Listen, I love Sebastian Lletget. What we saw last year was a step in the right direction. He was great in the center. Does that mean that he is able to play there in that central role throughout the entire season and give some production like perhaps he did in the first season? Because if you look at the goals in the first season, in 2015 versus the goals in 2016, granted, different positions, asked to do different things. I'm not stupid. I'm not MLS. I'm not going to run out a video about Nigel de Jong not scoring any goals and then being like, this is why he's not any good. I'm not that person. I understand it. But you have to understand, young kids, you never know if you're ever going to get the consistency that's demanded for professional players. I think Lletget has a very good chance of being a very good professional player for a long time. The LA Galaxy are lucky to have him. But if you're going to rely on him to be your central playmaker there, that could be an issue. So you need somebody else in central, whether that's a central defensive midfielder or whether that's more of a playmaking attacking midfielder in the center.
Or box to box.
Or box to box would be great too. But you need another winger too, and that's the problem. You can't rely on Mendiola yet. I would love to. You can't rely on Bradford Jamieson IV. Everybody wants to get younger, but who are you going to rely on right now? And you have a starting lineup that you can rely on, 85% of the players in the starting lineup. But without adding designated players right now, you are woefully short in the midfield. And the midfield needs 2 designated players in there just to bring it up to a serviceable level right now.
Yeah, we are in dire straits in terms of our midfield. We need some heavy-duty reinforcements in the midfield. Connor Hourihane, I looked at all the videos I could find of him, and he does look very good. It's very hard to tell from those videos.
Right.
My issue is, one, I don't understand why the Galaxy go to England all the time when it's where you're guaranteed your dollar is going to have the least amount of value. Because player salaries are so inflated there.
They are.
And the other issue is that I think he's sort of an atypical DP. He would be an atypical DP for the LA Galaxy, which I'm not necessarily opposed to, because he would be just a much younger player and coming from a championship team instead of...
And he's unknown.
And he's unknown. Like, he really is. He's not even that well known in
Barnsley.
EPL. I mean,
In Barnsley, they don't. They barely, no. In Barnsley, they really like him. In
they
fact,
love him at Barnsley because when I was on Twitter, people were threatening me and
I saw
cursing
that.
at me about that. Yeah.
they're like, yeah, hands off Barnsley,
Yeah.
hands off
They-
Horehead. Yeah, I know. So it is what it is. And listen, it would be atypical. I think the LA Galaxy have gone atypical in this offseason. I think Kurt Arnolfo's hiring is atypical for the LA Galaxy. So, outside the box thinking can be really awesome.
Can be good.
When it works.
Right.
or it can collapse.
The downside is, here's the other thing is that he has interest from teams with a lot more money than the LA Galaxy. And I'm not interested in getting to a bidding war with teams that have endless pockets like Aston Villa. Okay. I mean,
Right.
it would be so much more wise for us to be like the Sounders, like RSL, like Kansas City, like go to South America where your dollar really can get value.
I know what you're saying. No, there's value to be found in South America. I will tell you that, you look at what the LA Galaxy were able to do with Robbie Keane. And listen, granted, I fully admit to having to look up who Robbie Keane was whenever the LA Galaxy signed him. And I know that makes me not a soccer fan in a lot of people's, but it was sort of like, as far as name recognition goes, he wasn't like top of the list there, Wendy. This wasn't like easy, like, oh yeah, everybody knows who Robbie Keane is. Well, like everybody knows if you pay attention to the EPL and you know stuff about national. Listen, Josh focuses on the LA Galaxy. He's lucky if he learns names of the other players on like other teams in Major League Soccer.
Right.
So like, even going there and finding nobody knew Robbie Keane was going to be Robbie Keane in Major League Soccer. There was thoughts about it. There was like, hey, he could be good, but nobody thought he was going to be the best designated player the league ever had up to this point. Sebastian Giovinco could surpass him.
Hoorheim could be a great choice for us. But my issue is that if he has interest from, say, a half a dozen teams like Aston Villa, Sunderland, like I do not want to get into a bidding war because I think that the Galaxy are going to undermine their whole objective here, which is
saving
they want
money.
to get less expensive options.
Right. No, I get it. All right. I will tell you that coming up on this show in January, currently scheduled to have LA Galaxy president Chris Klein on the show, coming up like the middle or the end of February. So you can keep your eyes peeled for that. The middle or the end of January. So before really the preseason is going to start up, LA Galaxy president Chris Klein will call into the show. That's at least scheduled right now. So when that happens, I will let you know. We will maybe do a live show. I don't think he'll be in studio like he was last year, but he will be coming down or he will be calling in, so we'll get to talk to him. So have your questions sort of ready. You can start sending them in now. I'll start writing those. So Chris Klein. I'm also efforting to have Peter Vianis on the show eventually before the season starts, and I'm also going to try and have former LA Galaxy player Mike Magee on the show as well. So
I'd love to have Mike Magee on the show.
It would be great. I once apologized to Mike Magee for writing him and saying what a horrible player he was. That is a true story. It happened. People were around to witness it. So we said
my boyfriend.
Yes, Christian was there. That's right.
Yes.
He was there. Yes, it was a wonderful moment of which I stuck my foot in my mouth. So it was a lot of fun. All right, so that's it. Before we close the show, though, people have been asking me to talk about Nigel de Jong and why Nigel de Jong left the LA Galaxy. So I want to, Wendy and Ben, I want to give as much information as I can, fully understanding that all this is rumors. I have no hard facts. I have nothing that, oh yes, this is the smoking gun. This is what happened. I have none of that. I don't know that anybody does right now. I know some of the best reporters in Major League Soccer don't have the information that we want on why Nigel de Jong left the LA Galaxy or why the LA Galaxy let Nigel de Jong leave. So I will tell you that that's my disclaimer. So I don't want to get, I don't want to have Bruce Arena show up on my door and be angry with me, whenever I say that, although that would be good. I would record that. So, not a problem. But okay, so here is what we know. We know Nigel de Jong left. He went to Galatasaray. The LA Galaxy let him go to Galatasaray. It was before the, how many games? Was it 25 games or 23 games? Something like that. It was before his 23 game max that if he got it, he would become a designated player, which, by the way, right now, if you had Nigel DeJong as a designated player coming into 2017, you would...
Wouldn't that be exactly what we need?
You're like, ooh,
we're
okay.
looking for like a midfield presence. He would be perfect.
Yeah, so I get it, and all those things make sense, that type of thing. There is a rumor, and it's probably not even a very good rumor, that Major League Soccer forced Nigel DeJong out. All right. And one of the reasons is that we have talked about the owners and what the owners are capable of. And Bruce Arena has complained about the owners before. And maybe that didn't help him so much in a lot of cases. But the owners in Major League Soccer and the commissioner are perfectly capable of making that happen. You even see the video that went up after Nigel DeJong. We make fun of it all the time. Which
so tasteless.
It was tasteless. And it was... completely misrepresenting who Nigel DeJong was. And if you remember, I would lean away from the fact that Bruce Arena thought Nigel DeJong was a distraction. I don't think that was true. And I don't think he was to the team. He was one of the... we talked about Giovanni Dos Santos being named, Player of the Year by the fans. We talked that if the press would have voted, Jelle Van Dam would have won Player of the Year, and he also won Defender of the Year, and that would have been the first time that happened. So we talk about that. I will tell you, if Nigel DeJong stayed and played throughout the season, he would have won MVP and Defender of the Year. So, it was one of those. Nigel DeJong was the best player on the LA Galaxy in 2016
for the first half.
And who knows what he does in the second half if he stays and does all that stuff, and does he outplay Jelle Van Dam, because Jelle really came on in the second half, but Jelle steps up because Nigel DeJong isn't there. So if Nigel's not there, does Jelle have it? It's all like circumstantial. But anyway, all that said, I think it's perfectly reasonable to theorize that the owners could have forced the LA Galaxy to get rid of Nigel DeJong because they didn't like the negative attention that he brought with his challenges, even though they weren't that bad. You saw the league react harshly on a challenge that, quite honestly, shouldn't have been react. No, it made no sense. And you can look at Nat Borchers and all the dirty things that he has done, and the reaction that he gets is completely different than what Nigel DeJong has done. Nigel DeJong has a long history, and he's responsible for a lot of that history, Wendy. He is a guy who has done things he shouldn't have done. I will tell you that you will not find a better competitor. You also won't find a nicer guy off the field, as I had a one-on-one sit-down interview with him. I couldn't speak highly enough of him, and I will take that to my grave and tell anybody who will listen that Nigel DeJong is one of the nicest guys I ever met.
Yeah, he's a completely nice guy.
Amazing, and I think he's a wonderful footballer, and I think Bruce Arena was 100% right. And even the way you listen to Bruce after Nigel DeJong departed,
he was mad.
You could tell. He was like, I don't think there are people here who understand, how good Nigel DeJong is. Right, and how skillful he is. And if you listen to how he says that, and you put that in the terms of Major League Soccer and the owners forced the LA Galaxy to get rid of him because they didn't want him to be a designated player, they didn't want him to hurt their players. I think it was like, I could see that being argued. I think that is an interesting take on the Nigel DeJong rumors. And if that happened, then, it's...
And that is part of MLS. I mean, MLS has a lot of detractors that I fight with all the time, but it's this component, which lends completely validity to those complaints, because the ownership should not be able to direct the LA Galaxy who it shouldn't have as designated players. It should not have an ability to intervene in LA Galaxy's decision making when it comes to on the field decisions like that. And it is decisions like that which reflect really badly on the league.
And yeah, I think that if that is true, again, total rumor. I have no evidence to support this whatsoever. I can connect dots. I can guess. I can sort of look back and say, this might make some sense. But just the fact that when you theorize that and you look at that, it might make some sense. So anyway, maybe you can't blame Bruce Arena and the LA Galaxy for Nigel DeJong's departure. Perhaps you can't blame Nigel DeJong for Nigel DeJong's departure. Perhaps the blame is other ways. The bottom line is that right now I think the LA Galaxy would like to have Nigel DeJong back. I will tell you that I wasn't a fan at the time of him becoming a designated player. I think that was probably a little shallow in looking back in hindsight, to understand. But it's a defensive player. I always have a tough time making a defensive player a designated player. And
I was fine with it.
Yeah, I know, and I don't disagree with people who say that. So I don't know. The LA Galaxy have a bunch of things to do. That's the bottom line right now. They got coaches to find. Kurt Onalfo needs a full coaching staff. Yeah, midfielders. They need midfielders. They need lots of midfielders. They need 2 designated player midfielders and some other signings to bring into the midfield in order to secure the midfield as a starting competitive team in 2017. Now, that being said, lots of people are saying this LA Galaxy team cannot win an MLS Cup. Currently constituted, I agree. They have no midfield, but they're also about short 5 or 6 players. So let's see how they complete that before camp starts and everything happens. Do you feel, Wendy, having talked about LA Galaxy soccer now for an hour, do you feel any better?
Well, I've gotten my soccer fix.
Right.
But I'm not going to feel assured. I'm not going to feel comfortable until we get a couple signings and I have some assurance that the front office knows what it's doing.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how that all... I mean, again, it is exactly what it is. They have stuff to do. They need to start doing it. The preseason starts, I think, January 29th.
The transfer window closes on January 31st.
Yeah, it's so. So you need to, and it's better to bring guys in now. It's time. It's time to bring guys in.
It's time to sign some people.
Yeah, and the winter transfer window in Europe is opening here shortly. So I mean, everything is sort of. Ben, do you feel any better about the LA Galaxy?
I do, Wendy, but I wouldn't worry too much about the January 31st European window closing because the Galaxy has that long history of being able to negotiate players out of contracts.
Yeah,
in Europe.
You can do that, and plus remember that you only need the window open in the league that you are in order to get a player. It doesn't matter. So it's when the window is open in Major League Soccer, and not necessarily where it's open anywhere else. They could be closed other places. You could still bring players in. So that still works. Though the transfer window only has to be open in the place you're going to, not the place you're coming from. So I mean, again, throw your hands up in the air. I got nothing for you guys besides, an hour's worth of LA Galaxy talk where we talked about, a lot of nothing. That's what's going on right now.
I just want to open my Twitter and find out the Galaxy did something. That's what I want to do.
Yeah.
Every day I check Twitter, and every day there's no news.
Yeah. Well, I mean, go to cornerofthegalaxy.com. I think there's 3 articles that are up there right now. So
I know, but it's like Mike
nothing.
Magee retired,
I got
Sebastian and Jesse are going to the national team. But I want to know about like what this team is going to look like in 2017.
They did re-sign some LA Galaxy 2 players. I don't. That doesn't help again. But at the same time, it is.
Or call up a player from Los Dos. Sign someone.
Do something.
Do something.
That's right. I think that's what's going to happen. All right. No scheduled show coming up for next week in terms of I don't know if we're going to have a show or not. If news breaks, we will have a show. If there's more stuff, I don't want to talk about nothing again. And this is still the off season. Josh still likes to have a little bit of an off season because he does 2 shows a week for the entire regular season. So keep that in mind. Again, Chris Klein scheduled to come on this show sometime in January, so we'll have that. Working to get Mike Magee on as well. We had Dave Sarachan. Dave was amazing. Like normal, still my tacos with Dave down in Hermosa Beach are still one of my favorite things in the whole wide world. So I love Dave, and I will reach out to him at any point where I think his expertise is needed throughout the season, and he has offered that as well. He's always a great guy. So thanks, Dave Sarachan, for coming on. Mike Magee, salute to Mike Magee Facts and Mike Magee and just the excellence that he has been. He's always been nice to the show as well. Always talk to me. Always has something interesting to say. Always fun. So Mike Magee, thanks for the wonderful career. It was an honor getting to cover you for really it was Mike Magee when this podcast started. He was one of the first topics to actually get talked about and argued about on Twitter was whether or not Mike Magee was any good. And Josh comes out on the wrong side of that one, which isn't anything different. All right, Ben, thanks for sitting in the studio. I'm glad to get your opinions on a couple of things. So stop by anytime you want. All right.
Thanks for letting me in here.
Yep. Wendy, anything else from you before we get out of here?
No, I just hope we sign someone.
That's all. You're just going to go to bed saying, Dear soccer gods.
Someone.
Dear soccer gods, can we please sign anybody? Can you sign AJ to a contract extension?
Sign Jell Van Dam to a multi-year extension.
There you go. With Tam. Tam's fine. Use Tam
you
on
can use
Yella.
Tam to sign Yella.
That makes perfect sense. Yella is I believe he's in Dubai right now. And he's hanging out with Steven Gerrard. So there you go. And he's also vacationing. They're doing some vacationing there. I think it was Dubai. I don't know. Follow him on Snapchat. That's where you find all of Yella's wonderful musings on the world. All right, Wendy, tell people where they can find you, and we'll get on out of here.
You can find me at Corner of the Galaxy and American Soccer Now, and on Twitter at BardsBlonde.
All right, and if you're looking for me on Twitter, it's at JGuesman, JGUESMAN, and of course, at Galaxy Podcast is where I run all the Twitter there. On Instagram, on Facebook, on any social media outlet you can possibly find. That's where you can find Corner of the Galaxy. Just type it in on iTunes, on SoundCloud, on Stitcher, any of those wonderful places. We are there for your LA Galaxy coverage. I want to thank Dave Sarachan once again for coming on. Great stuff from Dave. hopefully that gave you a little insight into Dave's mindset for leaving the LA Galaxy. And again, what would have happened if he would have been offered the job? Oh, it could have been Dave. All right, for Wendy Thomas, I'm Josh Guesman, and you've been listening to Corner the Galaxy on cornerthegalaxy.com, and we will catch you next time.
You've been listening to the Corner of the Galaxy podcast on cornerofthegalaxy.com. You can follow the show on Twitter and Instagram at Galaxy Podcast, and be sure to check out and subscribe to iTunes, Stitcher, and Facebook by searching for Corner of the Galaxy. And for all of your independent LA Galaxy news, discussion, and entertainment, including this podcast, head on over to cornerofthegalaxy.com. Fans, thanks for listening. We ask that you be kind and courteous to your neighbors as you leave the podcast. We thank you for joining us and look forward to seeing you again. Until then, I'm Michael Araujo, and on behalf of the entire Corner of the Galaxy crew, goodbye, everybody.